Let's kick this off. Why we can't, and honestly, why we absolutely shouldn't raise the Titanic. Over the next 7 minutes or so of this explainer, we're going to explore one of the most compelling engineering and ethical questions out there. We know exactly where the Titanic is, right? We sent cameras down, submersibles, even tourists. Which naturally leads us to one massive question.
I mean, it seems like the obvious move. You've got the most famous ship in history sitting right there on the ocean floor. Turn it into a museum, charge admission, and you'd make an absolute fortune. And believe me, people have definitely tried. For a century, billionaires, engineers, and salvage companies have pitched dozens of plans. Some were super creative, some were, frankly, completely insane, but as you'll see, every single one of them failed. To understand why, we've first got to look at where the ship actually is.
The Titanic rests about 12,500 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. That is roughly 2.5 miles straight down into the pitch black. To put that staggering number into perspective for you, if you took the Empire State Building and stacked it on top of itself more than 8 times, you still wouldn't reach the surface from the wreck. But depth isn't just about the sheer distance.
It brings us to a terrifying invisible enemy, and that is pressure. Down there, the water pressure is around 6,000 pounds per square inch. That is about 400 times the pressure you feel standing on the beach right now. At 6,000 psi, your lungs would be crushed instantly. Even a normal, heavily armored submarine hull would just crumple like an empty soda can. Honestly, a 3-second animation scene is all you'd need to show the instant, violent destruction that kind of pressure causes. And we've unfortunately seen this reality play out. In June of 2023, the world saw a really tragic reminder of exactly what that pressure does. The Titan submersible, which was carrying 5 people down to visit the wreck, suffered a catastrophic implosion. Its carbon fiber hull collapsed in literally a fraction of a second, and everyone on board was killed instantly. The force was so extreme that the entire vessel was reduced to fragments. That is what 6,000 psi does to a purpose-built deep-sea vehicle. So just imagine trying to rig cables and lift an entire ship in near-freezing water and complete darkness. But hey, let's say, theoretically, you somehow solve the pressure problem.
You still have a literally impossible math equation. The Titanic displaces over 52,000 tons. That is the equivalent weight of roughly 36,000 cars. There is zero chance any crane on Earth can lift that. No cable system ever built could handle that kind of load from a depth of 2.5 miles. The tensile strength you would need to pull 52,000 tons through 12,500 feet of water, it simply doesn't exist in any material we make today.
And even if you miraculously generated that upward force, you'd hit an even bigger roadblock. The Titanic isn't sitting down there in one pristine piece. It completely broke in half as it sank. The bow and the stern are separated by about 2,000 feet of open ocean floor. And while the bow does look surprisingly intact in the photos, the stern is just this twisted, compressed pile of steel that barely even looks like a ship anymore. Plus, even that intact-looking bow is incredibly fragile. A century of corrosion has severely weakened the steel, and decks are actively buckling inward. If you attach cables and started pulling, the ship wouldn't rise, it would just completely disintegrate. Of course, physics hasn't stopped folks from dreaming up some wild, impossible schemes over the years. One famous idea was to literally fill the wreck with millions of ping-pong balls to create buoyancy. Clever on paper? Sure, but at 6,000 psi, every single ball would be crushed flat the second it reached the wreck. Another plan? Inject the hull with petroleum jelly to displace the water. Someone else even pitched encasing the whole ship in a giant block of ice. Engineers actually calculated that would require pumping 500,000 tons of liquid nitrogen down to the seafloor. Obviously, none of this is remotely practical. And then, well, there's Hollywood. You might know Clive Cussler's 1976 novel, or the movie, Raise the Titanic. In that story, they patch the holes in the hull, fill the ship with compressed air, and it just rockets to the surface like a sub blowing its ballast tanks. But keep in mind, this was written when people still wrongly believed the ship sank in one piece. Even if it had, pumping compressed air at that depth would require pressures that the fragile broken hull could literally never contain. It's pure Hollywood fantasy.
Now, believe it or not, a really small piece of the ship actually did make it back up. Back in 1994, a company called RMS Titanic Inc. found a piece of the starboard hull in the debris field. They called it the Big Piece, and it was about the size of a bus. In 1996, they tried to raise it using these diesel-filled flotation bags. It was this massive spectacle. Cruise ships were circling, packed with spectators and even Titanic survivors. They inflated the bags, the piece broke the surface, the crowd goes wild, and then a hurricane rolled in. The line snapped, and the Big Piece plummeted right back to the bottom of the Atlantic. They abandoned the mission, but they did go back 2 years later in 1998 with better gear and successfully pulled it onto a recovery vessel.
So yes, they successfully raised a piece of the hull. But here is the reality check. That piece weighed 15 tons. The full ship is over 52,000 tons. Raising that single bus-sized fragment took 4 years, 2 massive expeditions, millions of dollars, and a whole lot of luck.
It's true that salvage teams have recovered over 5,500 artifacts from the site over the decades. Plates, jewelry, coins, even a violin. But it is absolutely vital to know that every single one of those objects came from the scattered debris fields between the two halves. They didn't come from inside the hull itself. And while we humans argue over what can or should be saved from the debris, nature is just taking its own course.
The Titanic is quietly being eaten alive. If you've ever seen footage of the wreck, you've probably noticed these strange reddish-brown formations hanging off the hull. They kind of look like icicles, but scientists call them rusticles. They're actually created by colonies of bacteria that literally feed on the ship's iron, leaving behind these super fragile hollow tubes. If you even touch one, it just crumbles to dust, taking a little piece of the Titanic's history right along with it.
And this brings us to a really fascinating biological discovery. In 2010, researchers from Dalhousie University found something completely new to science living inside those rusticles. They named it Halomonas titanici. It's a unique, salt-loving bacteria specifically adapted to consume the ship's steel. If you pictured a 2D animation of this process, it's just microscopic organisms continuously chewing away, creating tiny mounds of corrosion that eat deeper and deeper into the hull plates. This little microscopic organism has started a ticking clock. Scientists estimate the Titanic is losing hundreds of pounds of iron every single day. The support beams are failing, entire sections of the deck have already collapsed into the interior, bearing features that were clearly visible back in the 80s. At this rate of relentless decay, some researchers actually believe the Titanic could be completely gone within 20 to 30 years. There is absolutely nothing we can do to stop it, and honestly, a lot of people think that is exactly how it should be.
A protected deep-sea grave. Because beyond the crushing pressure, the impossible weight, and the iron-eating bacteria, there is a much more sobering reason the Titanic has never been raised. This isn't just an engineering puzzle, it's a gravesite.
Over 1,500 people died when the Titanic sank on April 15, 1912. Most of them went down with the ship, and their bodies were never recovered. When Robert Ballard first discovered the wreck in 1985, that initial rush of excitement quickly faded into a harsh reality. He and his crew actually gathered on the deck of their research vessel and held a moment of silence in the absolute darkness, standing directly over the graves of 1,500 people.
What Ballard saw down there made the sheer weight of that loss undeniable. You see, over a century in the deep ocean means the human bodies themselves are completely gone. Their freezing water and marine organisms took care of that. But their shoes remain. The leather contains chemicals that sea creatures actively avoid. So today, scattered all across that debris field, sitting exactly where passengers fell, are pairs of shoes. Like a mother's shoes sitting totally undisturbed right next to her daughters on the sediment. It is a haunting visual that reminds us of the true human cost here.
Because of this immense human tragedy, governments now treat the site with strict reverence. In 2012, the United Nations officially declared the wreck a protected site of cultural heritage. And in 2019, the US and the UK ratified a treaty that strictly regulates who can visit and what can be removed, requiring strict licenses for any activity within a 1-kilometer radius. The wreck is legally treated with the exact same respect and protection as a cemetery, because ultimately, that's exactly what it is.
Somewhere in that settling sediment are the very last traces of people who never made it home. We're talking about families who sold absolutely everything for a ticket to America, workers who saved for months just for a third-class fare, people like Mexican lawyer Manuel Urrutia, who mailed his mother a postcard of the ship the day he boarded, promising to visit her when he got home. She never saw him again.
So the real answer to why we haven't raised the Titanic is incredibly layered. We haven't raised it because we literally can't. The physics just won't allow it. But far more importantly, we haven't raised it because we shouldn't. The ocean is taking the Titanic back, piece by piece. The bacteria will keep eating, the steel will keep thinning, and eventually, there will be nothing left but a faint impression on the seafloor. Which leaves us with this final lingering thought. For the 1,500 souls who went down with that ship, maybe a museum or a tourist attraction isn't the right answer. Maybe the quiet deep, and time simply doing what time does, is the most fitting end there is.